Everything we know, from people and ants to stars and galaxies to quarks and atoms, the entire universe, might just be a simulation running inside a supercomputer inside an even bigger universe. Ancient philosophers said that the universe is a dream that we're waiting to wake up from. In this dream world of the imagination, anything is possible. All cultural items, from the dreams of our rodent-like ancestors, to books, to television shows, are merely permutations of the reality we think we live in. Today's age of computers and video games places simulations at the center of our cultural consciousness. A select group of us perform simulations for fun and profit, and we call them games, role-playing and otherwise. We live to run simulations. Join us on the Simulationist podcast as we explore our culture of simulations. Okay, welcome back, Simulationist listeners. This is episode number 7 of the Simulationist podcast. It is October the 23rd, 2012. I am Josh Trelevin, and with me
is Ryan Kirkby. We'd like to dedicate this episode to oil of oregano. If you have a head cold, it is the surest and cheapest way to clean out your sinuses.
Oh, so is that what you're taking there, Ryan?
Oh, yes.
Oil of oregano? Okay.
That'll do everything for you, but, if you really need your sinuses, it hurts to do, but if you need them clean, it'll do it.
Wait, it hurts? You don't just eat it?
Well, it's like a liquid. You drop it on your tongue, and it's concentrated essence of oregano.
Okay, I still don't see the hurting connection.
Have you ever had pure peppermint or spearmint or anything like that?
Okay, I'm starting to imagine it might be unpleasant.
It is notably unpleasant. You'd be lucky if you could take 2 drops to start with. I'm up to 5.
That sounds like a challenge.
Oh, trust me, it's a challenge. Even if you win, you lose.
Well, maybe we'll have to put that up on YouTube one of these days.
But don't worry, though. It's all natural. It's all good. So, you probably shouldn't vomit from it. But it does have a very strong odor and taste. So...
All right. Well, so did we welcome back our listeners? Yes,
we have.
Welcome back.
I've distracted you expertly, but we have. I guess what is kind of a segue from the previous episode.
Right, which hopefully you're clicking through all of these wonderful episodes one by one, and you just finished listening to that.
Yes. If you're doing it sequentially, you'll know that we ended off the last episode talking about the beginning of a story, particularly with the Hobbit as an example. Of how it started. And it really does say a lot on how you start your story, on how you want to do it, because every little variation, it tends to affect the tone of the rest of the story. If you have it start off with a particularly gruesome event, that's going to state, this is something, where people don't necessarily have fun and tiptoe through the tulips, buddy. This is where people get horribly killed.
Okay, yeah, so setting the stage, yeah, that's a good way to begin a story. Beginning a story is a very different animal from finishing a story, because you can get kind of praised for, setting up little mysteries and whatnot in the beginning of a story, but if you don't close them in the end, you can get in trouble.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I think a good example of that, sadly a good example of that, was Chris Carter's work on Millennium and The X-Files. Many good long plot hooks that kept going throughout the years, but in the end he just couldn't find a satisfactory conclusion to the whole thing. I think they did a real nice final episode for The X-Files, effectively recapping everything that's happened for anybody that's missed an episode or just didn't understand what was going on, and so that way everyone at least gets that closure, but not all of the hooks were resolved.
Okay, well, I don't mind that too much, although, glowing review from Ryan about The X-Files, although I wasn't a huge watcher of that show, so I wouldn't know all of the holes that were tied up and which ones weren't.
Well, I'll be honest, I really just wanted to give an example that wasn't the ending to the Mass Effect series. Because I think
Mass Effect, that's fresh in most people's minds right now.
Yes, but everyone's talking about it, so I wanted to go off the beaten path and go with something more with a historical precedent, and it's over now. They might do a 3rd movie. Everyone seems interested. They have to come up with a decent storyline and all that, but by and large, it's complete.
I like how it's really easy to think of examples of bad culture and bad writing
from relatively recently, but it's harder to come up with examples from the further back you go. It's harder to find bad stuff.
Well, that's the thing is times change. I remember just within the last week watching what was reported to be the worst episode of the Twilight Zone. It was a story by Ray Bradbury about a lady who dies, and so it's the future, but still kind of the 1950s. So they get like a robot nanny to replace her, and it has to deal with one girl not wanting to accept the grandma because of issues of mortality and stuff like that. I think it had a nice stuff. It could very much have been an interesting, very interesting movie dealing with complexities of feeling of loss.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said it was even a bad episode of The Twilight Zone, though, but apparently that is the worst thing, and people will cite that one as an example. For those of you out there who do want to look it up, it is underneath the poem title of I Sing the Body Electric.
Okay.
It's actually a nice poem and all that, but okay, there's some history going on with that. Ray Bradbury.
From Fame, the movie?
No, actually, although Fame takes that from the same poetry.
I see.
It's a nice piece of poetry from the 1850s, which you wouldn't suspect somebody coming up with poetry from the 1850s saying stuff like singing about the body electric. It sounds something very modern, but no, trust me, it's there. It's historically validated.
That's interesting. I think electricity would have been invented then, but...
Yes, it was. It wasn't at the state, like the omnipresence we have in society now. So I suppose it was still something you could use as a poetic fashion. It's something people don't regularly know about as much.
Well, I don't know. It'd be like singing about the iPhone today. I mean,
the iPhone electronic. No, I don't know.
I mean, well, like, if we thought of a modern technological equivalent to, I mean, what's better than electricity, really? But maybe the Internet, a song about the Internet?
Maybe you could have, like, a poem about the Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been done. I'm sure.
I think somebody's got it, but nobody in the large professional circles has done anything specifically for that.
I guess there's no top 40 song about the Hadron Collider.
Although, please, if for some reason Maya Angelou is listening to this, could you please write some of your magnificent poetry on the Large Hadron Collider? It would be magnificent.
Okay.
Oh, come on, like you would not listen. Like
I
you would not memorize
yeah,
Maya Angelou's poetry on the LHC.
I would quite like that, yeah.
So if you know someone out there, everyone who's listening that knows Maya Angelou, try and feed the idea down the line to her, and let's see what happens. You never know where a good idea starts. That's just my opinion, at least.
Yeah, well, I can't disagree. Well, I'd like to disagree. Maybe I can think of a way. Not in the next couple seconds, though. So, we were talking about beginnings.
How things start. We just started an idea, perhaps.
So it's its own... Beginnings is a different skill than endings. We established that.
But there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, sort of thing. Okay, well, we'll go with the standard D&D one. Everyone starts at the tavern.
Yeah.
It does make a certain sort of sense. You just got done slaughtering things, living, in the depths of who knows where. You've been out in the wild, effectively, no matter where it is. You're not in
like a deep, dark cave or a dungeon or a...
Yeah, or, just off on a isolated chain of islands or wherever your dungeon is. It's not the comfort of a tavern. You get home, what are you doing? You've got a lot of spare money. You're getting yourself some booze, some good hot stew, and you're going to relax in front of the fireplace because that's the equivalent of television, really.
So right now, you're making the case for the tavern beginning.
I'm saying, okay, it's cliche. It is so cliche they even mentioned it in the 3rd edition manual as the cliche opening for how you start.
But my question, though,
there's
since
nothing
we're
wrong
talking
with
about it, is it cliche that characters have physical bodies? Is it cliche that they have weapons and armor?
Well, I have had an idea about all non-physical PCs, and I think actually even Monty Cook ventured in on that realm and the Ghost Walk setting.
Yeah,
which has some interesting stuff to go with that. But it's considered a little overdone as some way to start. But it doesn't necessarily have to be just a tavern. But I think it should be expanded to just any communal location. For instance, not every society has to, involve alcohol sort of thing. You can have a completely chaste society intellectuals, you could have everybody meet at the library.
Well, yeah. Although one of the reasons why taverns work in the medieval age is because that's basically the source of clean drinking water, clean fluid for the human body, because regular water was not sterile in those days, in the medieval times.
That's the thing, though, is most cases don't have to deal with the worry of contaminated groundwater because they're in a D&D setting where the only time you'll encounter contaminated groundwater is when somebody purposefully poisons it.
I guess I like my D&D settings in which, well, maybe your druid only comes by once a month because he has a dozen villages that he watches over, plus a forest and whatnot, so he can't purify the water, 365 days a year.
Or however many days your calendar year has in your setting.
Right.
Sometimes it works a little oddly. Sometimes, you have 120-day seasons instead of the 90.
How many days is the year on that new planet they found around Alpha Centauri? It's like a 4-day year.
Yeah, that's really close. I mean, that's even closer to the sun proportionally than Mercury. So it doesn't really matter how short the day is there because everything's on fire. And it's a level of precedence. It doesn't matter how long your year is when you have to worry about combusting.
I guess, yeah. Well,
when lead is something that rains down from the sky, you have bigger worries.
Does lead rain down from the sky?
When the temperature is high enough, yes, it does. It's gaseous, and then it's liquid.
Oh, you don't happen to know the point of where lead turns gaseous?
It's actually fairly low compared to other metals. I know it's much less than 1,000 degrees Celsius. I think it's somewhere in the 800s, 874 degrees. That's just a number off the top of my head. I'm likely completely off, but if I'm right, I'm totally the science man.
Well, we could look it up and then go back and edit it in.
No. If I'm going to be awesome, it's going to be awesome by truth, not awesome by manufacturing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's just how I roll. It can be any communal place. For instance, we were saying, we were mentioning druids and their water supply.
Yeah.
Now, where's the other area where clean water is in very high demand? Boats and ships. If you have
boats and ships.
Listen, they can't drink the seawater. You don't drink the seawater unless you're in a campaign that specifically states the ocean water is salty.
Well, I suppose there are certain seas where it's less, not seas necessarily, but inland seas or lakes where the water is fresher.
Conceivably, you could have a large one like that, yes. But by and large, most of the places have to have their bottled and self-contained water.
Yeah.
You get one spellcaster for that. That works. I think a boat is an even better area than a tavern, though, for players to meet and join up on a space. Because what else are they going to do on the boat ride?
Well, sure. I mean, it can work. But it lacks some things that the tavern lacks, which is that you can't walk outside of a boat and go the 4 cardinal directions. You have to go where the boat...
Well, you can. Oh. It's not recommended, especially if you're in heavy armor.
I love that about D&D. You can.
No one's actually going to stop you from going right overboard. It's just not a very good idea.
Just roll a constitution check to see if you swim to the next continent.
And, maybe if you've got some good luck going, maybe there's merfolk.
Actually, yeah, if I were the DM, I would probably throw in some merfolk just
to point and laugh at the people as they start drowning, then rescue them once they're unconscious.
Yeah.
Because that's how I like to play my merfolk. They're good, but not that good. They're not dolphins, buddy.
And then my merfolk would fail their heal check and not know that humans need to breathe air and bring them to their underwater hospital. Oh no, they're drowning.
That's okay. That's why we have resurrection spells. That's like a I'm sorry button for everything. That winds up being lethal.
Yep.
But I do think it works very well because the tavern place typically has the entertainment. Technically, when everyone's there, they're paying attention to the bard telling stories, or they're just mulling over the local ale and relaxing. If you're on a ship, you don't necessarily have that sort of enjoyment. You might make some small talk with the crew when they're done with their day, but, if you're just a passenger, you're going to have to spend time with the other passengers. It's just how it goes.
Well, how big of a ship are we talking here?
I was thinking standard size sloop, larger than the pinnace size. Definitely not any larger than a small galleon.
Okay, like a galleon. Okay, so
you could go with a galleon as a nice transport thing. You could actually that works nice well because both of them are the larger size could work out into a trade route. You can combine that with a caravan. One person knows, hey, something's going along. You follow the caravan along. Maybe make some gold along your way if you can hold your own in a fight. But the caravan is another way too. They're effectively the same thing, one on land, one on sea. So if you don't like a ship because you can't just wander off at a moment's notice, then perhaps a caravan is the way to go for you.
I like the idea of a caravan, although, like, I always, like, this is my sticking point with caravans, is always that, like, if you're traveling with a caravan, you're basically walking. Like, you're basically... I guess you have tents and stuff that you set up every day. Is that how that works?
It's a strength in numbers sort of thing. Everybody goes along the same area because, sure, the Goblin Bandits might try and attack 1 or 2 people, but they're not going to attack 20 people with horses and, oh geez, they look armored too. No, it's just not going to happen.
Maybe a couple armored escorts anyway.
Yeah. Well, if it's a caravan worth its salt in a D&D campaign, they want armored escorts and they need armored escorts. Yeah. Random encounters. Think about it. Think about it.
I think we're on the same page because the wilderness is dangerous. Although I wouldn't put it in terms of random encounters because that's something that happens to protagonists and PCs and players.
It would explain why most farmers are only level 1. They don't encounter a goblin every 2 weeks, kill it, gain the experience points. Although I did do a campaign where everybody was like the non-heroic classes, just trying to establish a farm out in the wilderness. Very good stuff going on. Very interesting. Lots of variation going on that you don't see in a standard campaign.
Yeah, well, I like that because I love like those non-standard campaigns where because the thing that I really enjoyed when I first started playing D&D is like, you know, I am this character. I am in a tavern. And I have all these options open to me. Now I can be creative and say, what do I want to do in this tavern? Like, are there...
do they have a game of darts in the corner? Can I start up a game of darts here? Who's looking around in the shadows?
Yeah, what sorts of people are around? Are there girls? Are there any girls there?
I want to do that. Yes. Unfortunately, there's rules for that. It's a charisma check, and if that succeeds, then there's a constitution check. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
I mean, not from personal experience, but...
No, thankfully we've never had to deal with that in any of our campaigns. Our characters are fairly straight-laced.
Well, I suppose, what would I... As a DM, I would say it happens behind, like, you know, off stage, and you return to the group an hour later. 5 minutes. Okay, we're getting too detailed now.
Make it 15 minutes later. Constitution check if you get a natural 20 on the whole thing. Half hour later. Maybe an hour. Whatever.
Anyways, my point was to not dwell on the details, but anyway.
It's one of those simple things where you can just make up the rules off the top of your head, depending on how things go.
I think, that's what the DM is there for.
But, I mean, we don't have to necessarily relate it just to the standard tavern inn. There's other places to go when you want entertainment. You could have like a gambling hall. And that's an interesting thing. That's something where people are coming in interacting with each other. A good chance for a fight. And just a whole lot of good non-standard dungeon encounters.
Yeah. Although, is that something you want out of your starting area? Do you want the possibility of fights and drama to come up there? Or do you want it to be kind of a safe home base where the players can escape from their other drama?
I think if there's going to be a fight, it works best if it's a minor fight. They encounter a person clearly below their threat level. If they're first level, they encounter a drunken guy who thinks they cheated on a game of cards and thus wants to fight them. And then, hey, that's how they start bonding. Yeah, I remember, that's right, that drunk guy, yeah. Man, what was his problem that night? I don't know, but we trounced him good.
I don't know. Knowing player characters, they might kill and then the players might end up in jail.
Which is another good area, depending on how you want the theme to go. Everybody starting in a common jail area.
A common jail with no equipment.
Well, they can get it back when, they've paid off their debt to society, which might just happen to be, oh, hey, a local lord is willing to spring for that. They get their stuff back if they're willing to go on a quest for him on behalf of the local area, city, town, village, wherever you are.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to start. Yeah, so, yeah.
It's not necessarily the best way. It does smack a little bit of railroading. But I think there's some interesting things that can happen there. Like, if you have one person being a paladin, why is the paladin in jail? They are notorious for following laws.
Because he accidentally killed that guy who picked a fight with him in the tavern. Duh.
He was wearing gauntlets. He accidentally did legitimate damage instead of subdual. Oh, no. But you could set that up as saying that how the nature of the town is that even a paladin can find himself in jail. One night in Bangkok makes a hard man humble.
I suppose, like, if the town is, let me see, if they have a jail, they probably care about law and order.
Or at least enough to establish their order.
Yeah, so they're probably some kind of lawful. And if they're putting a paladin in there, it's either because they're so strict that they will enforce their rules against paladins, or they just didn't like the paladin.
A legitimate cause. Let's admit it, not all paladins exactly role-play their charisma to the best advantage.
Or I want to say, like, there's some corruption in the town and they trumped up some charges against him. And
so it's effectively like having an off-duty, legal official or law official in, say, 1950s Las Vegas. There is a law there, but it's the mafia's law.
Yeah.
Although, for official purposes, the mafia never had anything to do with Las Vegas, Nevada, so we don't need to get shot for saying so.
In case any mobsters are listening,
they don't exist.
How do you like the podcast so far?
We like to cater to everybody, whether or not you are a law-abiding citizen or otherwise. But you could have it work in some other ways for a communal area. To start with, if the big bad is like the head of, we'll say the green skin horde, you got orcs coming in, you could make it everybody meets at the refugee camp. And then everybody has a quick and legitimate need for banding together. They lost everything else they own except for what they're carrying with them right now.
Well, that sounds fun and exciting too. The thing, let's see, I will quibble with all of these like non-tavern starting points. Because I think that what this tavern does for you is that it allows a wide range of backstories for, like, each player could conceivably come up with his own little backstory and end up in the tavern. Whereas these other stories kind of require them all to have, like, a common background.
We can figure it this way. It's all about the motif. If you want to really show the despair and horror of war, then the refugee camp is clearly better than a tavern. Well, the tavern does send out the warm atmosphere to it. Everyone's happy, or at least okay. If you're in a refugee camp, that's miserable. That's showing the misery of what's going on.
Yeah, and that's something I don't necessarily want to do. At least,
but if it
I
does
might
help,
do that one time.
If it does help show the nature of the villain, then I would say consider going for it.
Because it would get the players mad at the villain and want to stop him, kind of.
Yeah,
deal.
Maybe the fighter used to be the town blacksmith. Does he have the money to actually pay to have a blacksmith, foundry and everything going on? No. Because that all got smashed before the story started. That's why he's in the refugee camp now. He had to leave.
Yeah, okay, that explains something. Yeah.
So that way you can have a person have whatever they want. You can even have a person of noble birth be in there because, well, you know what? Now that duchy no longer formally exists. So yeah, you can have a person who is noble and then you don't have to worry about extra advantages. Sure, he's noble blood, but no land.
Well, I like to imagine like a world, a medieval world, in which, for some reason, the other refugees, like they have this, like, kind of alien to us kind of value system where they think, oh well, we need to treat the aristocrat better, even though he's like, he's been put in with us.
Well, yes, but then you don't have to worry about necessarily him saying to anybody who doesn't agree with him, this is my land by birthright, do as I say or I'll put you in the stockade.
Well, I guess he has to be more, like, he has to show more of those actual leadership and noble qualities.
Which I do believe is a good thing to force anybody trying to be noble into doing. Let's face it, we've all been in a situation where a person says they're this kind of thing, but then they just don't follow through with any of the associated traits. If you want to be the noble leader, have the noble leadership qualities and traits associated with it.
Yeah, well, I like that as a story because I'm not sure if I like it as a D&D scenario, but I do like it as a story scenario because it's a chance for a character to grow and change, which is, I think, what stories are kind of about.
Oh, definitely. If a person doesn't change, it's not really much of a story.
And I think we've talked about that already, so, yeah.
But yeah, so I think the common location is clearly one. It works both in written fiction, it works well in the gaming fiction, and I think modern equivalencies have been seen so very often in a number of different situations in that, like, televised fiction.
Standard location you're talking about?
Yeah, the communal area. Where did Neo actually first physically, I'll do physically in air quotes, where did he first physically meet Trinity?
Okay.
Nightclub.
Okay.
He was chatting with her, follow the white rabbit and all that, and then he follows them out to the nightclub, and that's where he actually meets them and starts going in. He didn't just type at the computer and they talked to him and then he decided to become one of them. No, they met at a nightclub, the communal area.
Did they meet at a nightclub within the Matrix?
Yes, it was before he was removed from the whole thing.
Oh, why don't I remember that scene?
Because it was at the very start. It was just like the quick short images, short scenes. Neo does this, gives him the stuff, you're my own personal Jesus sort of thing, the allusion to his savior status. This is some of the little things going on like that. She meets him, he does a blackout thing, goes to work, weird stuff happens, and then, hey, Matrix, real Matrix stuff starts. But he first met Trinity, and that's how things effectively, got. That's how he joined the group, I guess you could use it in the gaming parlance.
Oh, so he went to a club and took some drugs, and he got his mind expanded.
Well, there's some stuff in the warehouse later on where, you take the blue pill, you take the red pill.
So there wasn't a blue pill, red pill at the nightclub?
No, there was meeting Trinity and some stuff going on. He actually gets to see who she is, whether or not he puts all the pieces together. Oh, she's the person who was talking with me. She's the person that everyone was talking about years ago making the wicked, wonderful hacks. Hack the system. So there's clearly that. You could work with Hackers is another example. Wonderful movie from the 90s, if anyone remembers it. You should. It's got a young Angelina Jolie in there. Do you remember?
Do I remember Hackers?
I hope you do. If you don't, I suggest you go back and get that.
I may have to watch it again.
But the main protagonist meets the rest of the hacking gang, the phone phreaker and all this and all that. He meets them at the local arcade. That's a communal area. That's where you get a chance to meet, greet, and socialize, because that's effectively what all these areas are. It's an area for socialization. As much as I don't think you'd want to associate jails with, social setting. Yeah, if you want to talk in the jail and someone else wants to talk to you, yeah, you can chat the night away as you wait for bail to be posted.
I like that idea of jail. What's the movie with where they're all in jail together? Reservoir Dogs.
Yes.
Do you remember that scene?
Vaguely, but yes. There's a lot of good situations you can do with the jail as either, the ending bit, they all wind up in jail, and you can do that at the start of the film, and then you find out how they all wind up there. But, I think the communal area, it is one of those things that's being done to death with a tavern. Not necessarily wrongly done to death, but it is done an awful lot. But it's a nice area. But there's other ways to establish the same sort of thing. One thing I'd really like to try sometime is a flash forward. Technically, prolepsis. Not to be confused with prolapse. Don't Google that, please. That's
prolepsis. Yeah. Okay.
That's when you see it's seeing of future events.
Yeah. So you flash forward. Okay.
Yes. As opposed to a flashback when you recall something previous. In the D&D setting, it works very well. Divination is known and an accepted fact. People can divine the future to some extent. So you can have what would be effectively a cookie-cutter campaign. Well, we won't even call it a campaign. It'll just be like a story arc. Go to the dungeon, defeat things, fight the boss monster, win the day, go home. But as they're on the way there to the area, which is where you'd start the thing, you'd have a messenger come up and say, I'm on behalf of the diviner so-and-so, and he has had a vision regarding your fates. And then You just relay out a situation where some of the players are dead, some are victorious. Maybe some of them are still alive and enchained against the big bad. It does make the big bad seem like a nasty guy, and it gives the players the advantage of fighting fate, because that way they're it's like, oh, I'm supposed to die. No, I'm too much of a hero. I'm going to say this fate doesn't happen to me. I'm just going to punch my way to success. I'm imagining a monk in this case, so.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Well, and I guess you got to somehow let the players know that maybe the diviner drops a hint that, not all divinations are set in, stone or something like that, just in case they're like, oh, so you're saying we're just going to die and all get captured? You know what I mean?
Well, they could, but I'm sure there's going to be at least one person in the group say no, because now we know that this is going to happen. We can try and work ways we wouldn't normally do and work it out that way. Yeah. Or, as of course is always the case with divinations, is the vision you see is not necessarily what actually happens, but more of a compilation scene of all the events put into one cohesive image. You might not necessarily die at the big bad, but in the series of events, you will become deceased by the time the villain is done with whatever they're doing.
So that's almost like a vague prophecy, kind of like...
And I think it works well. It's something that you see occasionally, not very often done in written fiction. I think it has some very interesting potential to do in a Dungeons and Dragons style game.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see that. Like, just have a series. Like, it makes sense because they do appear in a lot of stories and mythology and stuff. Seers show up and predict the future, and then you have to either go with it or not. I mean, Oedipus comes to mind.
Not for the standard reasons, thankfully.
Just whether or not you can avoid your fate, or whether...
Which I think would be something I'd really like to get into, is the whole balance of free will and fate in like a D&D style game.
Well, that sounds kind of heavy, but okay.
It is pretty heavy. I think it would make for some very interesting role-playing, though. Like, what if the apocalypse has to happen? Because let's face it, every once in a while a D&D campaign world undergoes some sort of cataclysm, and everything sort of goes back to, oh no, now we're just recovering, and then they get back up there and something else happens. Sure. That's why there's always ruins going about. That's why these big kings are no longer around leading us. There's always something that's happened that's always ruined it. What if that's how it's supposed to happen in like a campaign world? That every once in a while an apocalypse has to happen. What happens if the PCs stop it? Does another cataclysm or apocalypse come up? What happens then? Can they keep fighting? How long can they keep avoiding the future of the fate of the world?
I don't know. Until they die, I would presume, but...
I think it could be something interesting, You just start throwing every sort of thing going at them. Okay, now Lich and a whole bunch of undead are trying to storm stuff. Demons are popping up out onto the material plane.
Okay, now we're sounding a little contrived.
Well, just go through all of them, and then if the players can take them out one by one, see what happens. Keep upping the stakes.
Yeah.
If you have the Armageddon Stone player adventure, that's a good way to go, too.
That's basically the recipe for, continuing an epic level campaign, which is fine if that's what you want to do. I don't know if it doesn't smell quite right to me, but as far as, a consistent world, although I guess my idea of a consistent world is one that doesn't experience cataclysms, but I think that they should, obviously, sometimes.
Well, it just seems to be one of the things that happens so very often. Pick a campaign setting, and it's had its thing. Dragonlance has had what they call the Cataclysm. Forgotten Realms has had, how many now? There's been several. If you want to switch over to 4th edition, there was the whole spell plague and the 100 years of what the heck is going on. The Ravenloft campaign setting had the Grand Conjunction, and that going wrong. I'm not sure if you know about that. There's a sequence of events that was going to disperse the various realms back to where they came from, but in the end, 2 of the events happened in the wrong order, so everything got messed up, and things changed. It was their version of it, without being as over-the-top explosive, befitting the Ravenloft style. Not necessarily big explosions, but things going wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, the Greyhawk campaign setting, you had the 2 old nations with the mutual destructions of epic level spells on each other. And it just happens again and again. It's something that keeps occurring within the fiction. The Wheel of Time series is a particularly notable thing. Sure, great civilizations come up, but they'll always go back down again as the ages turn and the wheel cycles round.
Well, I agree with that part of it. On a scale of centuries and stuff, it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be apocalypses and cataclysms and so on and so forth. In terms of the lifespan of a party of player characters who exist in one age, I can imagine them basically going from rags to riches, taking their country with them, basically, advancing to kings and queens and, becoming these great, powerful beings, almost gods, really. Although my point is that they don't become immortal. They just make the world really good, because that's kind of your goal as a piece. Well, not necessarily, but kind of what you do.
It's a nice side benefit as a perk of adventuring. You tend to get rid of the evil and make a good land.
Yeah, and it's like, rising tide raises all boats. The PCs get rich and they enrich everybody around them, and so on and so forth. But then, now they've created the next great empire, and it's up to their heirs whether they're going to defend it or whether they're going to hold it together.
Although if history has shown one thing, it's a person's heirs are not necessarily anywhere near as competent as they are.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if it works in the scale of life, the lifespan of PCs, but of course, once the PCs die,
I suppose in this case,
off.
In this case, it would be something like the PCs happen to be at the end of an age, and it would be like perhaps it's even a divine mandate. The gods don't want the various mortal races progressing beyond the capacity that they can control them, and so every once in a while, even though the good gods are good, they issue down, okay, we're going to smash things up, everything's going to be crappy for a while because you guys are getting too far ahead of where you should be as a mortal race.
Well, that's okay. I can see that happening. I like better, my idea is that I would prefer drama in the gods rather than being like kind of aloof and saying, every once in a while we just kill humans for the sake of it. I prefer it if the gods would have a little bit of drama and kind of a Ragnarok setting, like,
even they may die.
Yeah, they have to have a fight, or, just because that's their nature or something.
Maybe that's what happens when gods fight. Apocalypse on the mortal plane.
Yeah, I think that would be a good source for an apocalypse.
Well, there you go. It just happens that gods work on the speed that when they fight, it happens to be several centuries apart from the last time they got together to fight.
Yeah.
So, there you go. But yes, a little off topic for the start of the story. It's more of a full body and purpose of one. Let's see here. I like another one I'd like to try is a false start. The villain is supposed to be villainous. How do you show how a villain is villainous? You have him do bad things. Kill people. Do stuff like that. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, if you're a player, you don't want to die, just to show how nasty the villain is. So with a false start, you toss out small character sheets to all the players, and you have them, instead of playing the regular characters, start off with being these people for just a little bit, and then the villain comes in, does their villainous stuff, kills or imprisons them all, despite their best attempts, and that villain is nasty, he killed the people, and that way the players get to see it on a first-hand level without actually threatening the lives of their usually highly cherished characters.
I guess so. I mean, that's something to try. I would be hesitant to handing a character to a player knowing that you're definitely going to kill it.
Well, not necessarily definitely going to kill it, but the odds are very against them.
I can see it working, but I guess my preference, the thing I would do probably is just hope that a situation like that came up naturally, because it's been the case in my campaigns that I allow player characters to die. Sometimes I should not, but I do anyways.
Let the dice fall as they may.
And they do come up with another character, and the second character or the third character becomes the most beloved for some reason. Or
sometimes let's face it, the first character had the most character of that. And everyone kind of, do you remember that one, the person that wielded the two whips together? I remember that one. She sucked as a fighter, but it was so much fun having her.
Did I kill that character?
Yeah, although it wasn't really your fault. She charged the wyvern and got impaled by the poison stinger.
Ah, yes.
So, that's what happens when you charge a creature and your only weapons are whips.
Yeah.
Good character, lousy fighter.
It's far enough removed from the time. I didn't like the character to begin with, but...
I didn't like the character either, but the character was so full of character.
I suppose, yeah.
This person just imagine, I have the mentality, I am going to go out into the harshest realm that exists beyond conventional reality, and I'm going to do it with just 2 whips that aren't able to affect anything that has any real armor. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
The worst I can do is just make it really angry at me as I continue whipping it. Woo! Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
So, there's something to be said for bad characters sometimes. They're fun.
Yeah, well...
even if they're not effective.
I didn't like the character at the time, but thinking back on it, maybe it's a bit of nostalgia, but I like the character.
Rose-colored glasses sort of thing. The character wasn't really that bad. Just horrible. But I think the false start works interesting, because that way the players get to know the villain. They get to see and experience the villain without having to necessarily worry about their lives, or you necessarily needing to worry about the players accidentally killing the villain within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose. Oh, wouldn't it be fun if you gave them like minions?
Oh.
Like and the same sort of scenario. Like, you don't expect them to live, but you give them, like, each of the player characters a minion of the big bad guy, and they have to do a mission, but they all get killed or something like that.
Oh, so you could have it be from the evil side, as the players, are part of the force they're later going to thwart.
Yeah, and they discover how horrible the hierarchy is, because obviously they're all bullied and torturing each other. And
I like that, though, because it also gives the players the outlet for being an evil character, which tends to accumulate after so much time playing.
Yeah, well, that'd be fun.
So yes, I quite like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to involve a start to a story that changes the tone, that shifts things, and especially for players that have been doing it for a while, changes up how things start. And when you start differently, especially when you're a jaded gamer, one of your 30 year veteran neckbeards, so to speak, that just changing how things start can be so fresh and really get you back into the heart of the game, like you really want to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I think, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to do a lot of actual sit down and gaming lately, so I probably don't fall into the jaded category. I fall into the category of the guy who's been jonesing for a good standard knock 'em down D&D.
You're preaching to the choir there, buddy. We may have to do a roll-off, see who DMs.
Yeah.
Actually, that sounds like a pretty good idea. We might have to do that after the broadcasting, eh?
Well, I don't know if I'm willing to...
we can make it just like a little one-off sort of thing. There's a lot to be said for a one-player campaign. I remember back in 2nd edition, them having some stuff for showing like what you can do with just a one-player campaign. One DM, one character, that's all.
Okay.
I wish I had bought it, but I was young and broke and living in the middle of nowhere.
I should have stole it.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, I was living in the middle of nowhere. To get a hold of these books involves at least a 90-minute drive, and I was too young to have a license. So,
okay.
The chances of me even getting the option to steal it was so slim.
Of course, I'm not condoning theft.
No. I mean, heck, it took me over a year just to get a hold of any one of the core books. Mm-hmm. Such as where I lived. I didn't know that you could go to a bookstore and order books. I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah. Well,
boy, could I have saved myself a lot of hassle. That's okay, though. I got myself into the novels. And there's a lot of good stuff, good fiction you can read in novels. A lot of not so good but heavily enjoyable stuff you can do with the novels, too.
Okay.
Let's face it, not every novel for a D&D campaign is going to be a masterpiece written for the ages. Yeah. Sometimes it's fun, but let's admit it, not very good. But yes, there you go. some interesting stuff. Hopefully someone out there who's been listening to us has got a new hook for the start of their campaign. Yes, that's exactly what's going to get people in.
Yeah, in fact, you probably, like, as we went through, you probably were thinking as you were listening, oh, I have a great idea. So, you know, if you don't mind sharing it with us, we would love to hear what you have, what thoughts you have. You can post comments on the Simulationist blog, which is where these episodes appear.
So it should be easy to find. But yeah, we had enough ideas, we can revisit the topic. Because I think there's technically as many different ways of starting something, like a story based on a campaign or based on a novel, based on a television series, as there are novels, gaming sessions, and television series out there. If you want to get down to the minutiae, everyone's different. Mm-hmm. Even if it includes somebody making a bad pun, putting on a pair of glasses, and hearing the word "ah" going in the background. Yeah, that's right. You can complain. CSI starts the same way for CSI Miami, but they're all a little different. And I think that's dissecting the minutiae is something worthwhile in almost any circumstance. My personal opinion.
Dissecting the Minutiae, a new podcast coming from Josh and Ryan.
Oh, there we go. Yes, we'll put a pin in that, and we'll potentially come back to it later for a nice little mini-series. Yes. But what's your topic for today?
Okay, moving on to what my topic is. Okay. Well... Okay.
Okay, feel free to speak. We're among friends here.
Yes, because this is a thing where you can't leave too much dead air in a row, the topic that I wish to bring to the podcast is let's create a vampire. So I don't know how if this is going to work particularly well, just talking about it, but my idea was that we should, if you're going to create like a new setting, and this is not necessarily D&D, but it could be a role-playing setting, or it could be a novel setting, or like a universe. If you were to create a new, like a vampire, like what powers do you give it, like, and why?
Okay. Well, I think first it doesn't hurt to always look at the D&D stuff. Anything that has a defined mechanic allows you to sit down and just think about it aside from the fluff. Look at it as like a technical aspect.
Okay.
Because if we're creating a new vampire, we're going to be vampo engineers here. So we got to look at the hard stuff, the crunch, fluff.
So you start at D&D, give that as a standard.
Well, we could start with D&D's most known. We could take the vampires from say Shadowrun, but they're a little bit different. So, and not everybody's done the Shadowrun stuff, let alone encountered a vampire in the Shadowrun setting. It's one of the settings where you could completely ignore any supernatural aspects aside from the mage casting fireballs at you, and you're good to go.
And I want to pull out this idea from what you just said, that they're a little bit different, because I wonder whether, like, when you're creating a new vampire, it's necessary, because there are so many different vampires out there, it's necessary to choose some aspect of the vampires that probably, you're not going to duplicate something that's out there. So our vampires are going to be different. So, but is that, like, do we want to have differentiated vampires in a setting, or do we want to have vampires that feel more like standard, like this could come out of any novel?
Well, it's just the thing, it should be yours. If you're writing about a vampire, it should be your vampire. Don't write about somebody else's vampire, no matter how much you like them. Personalize it, customize it to your own, man. Make it like a glove until you're wearing it like a Count Von Count puppet.
So you want to create a distinguishing trait, like I think of the vampires from, like, I'm sorry to bring this up, I did enjoy Twilight, and
the vampires.
The vampires sparkle in that one, among other powers and different things that they can do.
And that's the one thing. Okay, nobody on the internet at least seems willing to admit that to liking the Sparkle Fairy vampires, but give her credit. Stephanie, was it Meyer?
Stephanie Meyer.
Stephanie Meyer.
Pronounced wrong. I don't know.
Oh well, Stephanie. Look, we're agreed on that. The first name is Stephanie. Stephanie has taken
Stephanie. Duh.
All right. The author has taken it upon herself to make that vampire her own.
Yeah.
You might not agree with that presentation of vampires, but they are very much her vampires. That's how she's imagining. She sees the concept, made it her own, and I think you should at least give proper props to that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So I think we're essentially we're agreeing that you want to differentiate your vampire, and you can use something as superficial as sparkly face.
If that's the only way you can imagine your vampire being, I say go for it.
Okay, but sparkly face is used now, so we can't use that.
No. But I think one of the core defining things of differentiating vampires is virus versus mystical.
Okay. Yeah,
for instance, the vampires in the Shadowrun setting have, human metahuman vampiric virus.
Okay.
Is what it's known as. So technically, they're not the same as a D&D vampire who is a mystical creature.
So see, like
it's at best a mystically aided virus.
I don't like either one of those. So I guess my vampire is going to have to be, if we're creating this together. Although I'm voicing my opinion that I don't like either.
They both have their bonuses and they both have their turn-offs for.
Yeah, and I don't like this like scientific. What is it called? It's the technobabble. Only it's biologist technobabble, like because it's a virus.
It's a biobabble.
I guess they do say like a virus could make someone super strong somehow or super resilient. Like they could be a zombie.
Well,
virus.
they do have retroviruses that are able to help out changing the genetic sequence of people that have some problems. It's very much in its infancy for what we can do, and I think it's a good thing because what you could do is have it work as a legitimate virus that now all of a sudden you can't process gluten. Ha ha ha, now everybody will have to have gluten-free foods. And congratulations, you've created another supervillain. That's just how it goes.
The glutton.
The gluten glutton, yes.
Now all the wheat is mine.
I have rendered the wheat of the world useless. And unless my demands are met, I will keep it useless, and I will never give you the antidote, and you shall ever be forever forced to have these allergies. Ha ha ha!
Oh, so you're saying there is an antidote to the virus?
Well, if you want to extort people for money, you should at least claim you have an antidote.
Okay. Oh, well, I guess
that just seems like good villainy, to make at least a claim that you can undo it if they give you enough money or meet what other demands you have.
I don't know. I have a question, though. Like, how fast do you think world-class researchers could solve this problem? Like, if a supervillain came up with an awesome virus, do you think in 6 months they could counter it?
We'll say something like this.
If you built in a safeguard, like if you built in an antidote, how fast could they find it?
They could probably find it within 6 months. If they wanted to come up with their own separate retrovirus to go out, it would probably take a couple of years. But until then, you could just have people popping pills or taking a semi-regular injection,
like a temporary antiviral or something like
yes.
that, just to stave it off.
Yes, something like that.
What is it? The glutton is
the gluten glutton.
Not that much of a supervillain because
he's at least ruined one crop of wheat.
It's like now everybody has to take a pill every day.
In which case, think about this: who are they going to start blaming? Who is this mysterious identity? Well, if he effectively forces you to take a pill to process gluten properly, wouldn't he be part of the corps that are selling these pills to you? Oh no. All of a sudden, you have a whole bunch of negative ill will against the pharma corps selling you the pills you need to process the food properly.
Okay.
So, in that case, he doesn't need to release it. All he has to do is extort the pharma corps. What are they going to do? Say no? Then he has a thing for them saying, no, let the world get sick. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's good villainy.
Yeah.
But you got to play this out ahead of time. You got to think down if you're going to be a villain and work out the different ways the whole thing can go. Work your way back up the tree and back down.
So okay. So we're at this point we're exploiting the pharmaceutical companies. I don't know. Instead of doing all that, why not just kind of buy stock?
Well, because you already made this virus that will prevent people from processing gluten. Got to do something with it.
And wait, how did you raise the funds to fund your research?
It was actually mostly funded during my grad research.
A grad student was able to fund this.
Well, it was his PhD project sort of thing.
Okay.
As the gluten glutton, I will say yes. I got a lot of bursaries to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
They didn't actually look too hard on the whole thing as to what I was doing. It was a retrovirus work, and so they were just happy as peaches to fund me. In fact, I got $10,000 a year from the very pharma corps I'm now extorting. World-class villainy. Right there, folks.
Oh, gluten glutton.
I'm going to have to make sure to remember this. That sounds like a good, fun villain to use in any case. I do like a superhero campaign. Someone who can pose a legitimate threat and yet you don't really feel threatened by.
Yeah.
Okay, but yes, we were talking about vampires and the different the different ways.
Okay, I think virus is out.
Honestly, I'm going to have to agree with you too. Okay. It does have a semi-nice ring to it, for a modern-style setting, but anybody with even a basic knowledge of how biology works will say, no, not really. That's not really how it operates. You can't really be dead and infected with a virus.
Yeah, so we're basically saying it's magic. Like, it might be devil magic or something like that.
Oh, yes, I think there's a lot of various ways you can go in there. You can go with demon blood causing it. Yes, the blood of the demon, is taken up by that of a man, turning him into the first vampire, and the whole thing propagates down through blood. Blah.
Taken up by... Okay, so the blood of like a person has to drink the blood of a demon.
A particularly, we'll say vampiric-style demon, because they would be like the primarch of what it is to be the vampire.
Okay, so we have two different paths to get there. One is that, a farmer accidentally pricks himself on a bush or, and then, mingles his blood with, a satyr or something. Satyr. The other is that, there's this aristocrat, Vlad the Impaler.
Mm-hmm.
Vlad, what is it, Tepid?
Well, first of all, I don't want to put too many bad words on Vlad. He was in an interestingly unique position as to defending the rest of the Christian world against the oncoming Ottomans. So what he did for a lot of the impaling was psychologically valid tactics to use to scare the opponent. Doesn't necessarily make him a good guy. I just think he was a very effective military tactician in that regard. Because when the people came down, we're going to invade, and then they find the previous regiment impaled along the road for several miles, they lose the will to fight. And they panic a lot easier.
Yeah, that's good, especially in the age of, militias and kind of,
Dude, I was just paid to fight for this. I am not going for this anymore. I don't care how much you want to pay me. I don't want to end up like these corpses, 15 feet in the air.
I don't know if the story's he did impale them alive, though, right?
Well, yes, but there's a lot of cruel things happening back then, so you can't look at it in a vacuum. People were doing some pretty twisted stuff back then. He was just the one everybody remembers for being a horrible monster, and he was not the only one.
Yeah, well, I understand that, basically, they were doing similar things in the Tower of London and stuff.
Yeah.
Even later.
They were doing weird things with people's heads over in the Tower of London, parading them around. I don't want to use the term barbaric, because it does denigrate the people of the Barbar tribes, but it was pretty barbaric, horrible stuff they were doing. And sadly, Vlad gets the worst end of it because, oh hey, let's read enough about him being a mystical monster now too. Haha. So, yes, just want to preface, I think at least part of his life story has been interpreted, sadly, incorrect.
Or I guess maybe lacking context.
Yes, it's kind of like seeing a hippie nowadays. Hippies don't look that good now when you just see, long hair, man, yeah, free love, smoking pot. But when your only other option was being a yuppie who just wanted wood-paneled everything with the really long, collars, things that they had turned down, and the weird high-up jeans and everything weird and creepy like that. No, hippies ain't so bad in comparison.
Okay, so that's our lesson on context.
Yes. Nothing happens in a vacuum, and it always pays to learn that. But yes, okay, so you were saying the whole Vlad style for vampirism?
Okay, so yeah, the Vlad style is that there's an aristocrat somewhere who's like kind of craving power, and he thinks that he finds an ancient tome that says, oh yeah, if you drink the blood of this demon, you have to summon a demon first, and it has to be the right kind of demon, and then you drink his blood, and then you gain some kind of superpower.
You could also work it as a cultist thing.
Okay.
As they worship it as like some sort of demigod. And verily, the god Nosferatos said to them, "Slit of my veins, for the liquid that flows forth shall give you great power indeed. Power over the mortal men that live around you, for you shall be mortal no more."
Oh, okay. I like this. So the vampire existence has a cult supporting it, like has an underground, like human, like network, basically.
Yes, the same way, that they would just be the natural outcoming of this sort of thing. Like how in D&D Next, with what they're doing with Minotaurs, is you sacrifice enough people, and hey, eventually this NPC becomes a Minotaur, and that's how Minotaurs propagate. In this case, it could be vampires.
Well, I didn't like that Minotaur thing sounded a little odd to me, but vampires, I think it works for.
I think it could work interesting, too, because that way you could establish primary vampires, the ones that were purposefully bestowed this amazing, horrible power by their patron force, and some sort of secondary ones that become vampires because of the biting, traditionally.
Okay, yeah, so...
The same way lycanthropes were in 3rd edition, primary versus secondary.
Okay, so I guess we can ask this question now. Do our vampires need to drink blood? Like, I think they drink blood. I think we're going to say vampires...
We could work with psychic vampires and draining just generic life essence, but I think the blood is got a lot of potential in there, and I don't care how many people have used it, there's always something you can do, and it works well, just absolutely great for symbolism. So
okay.
yes, definitely, I have to say blood.
So the question is, do they have to? Like, we know they do. Do they have to? Does it have to be human blood? And do they have to, like, go out hunting at night, or could they farm humans, or what do you think?
Well, I want to say it has to be intelligent blood. I am sick of hearing this, oh, I'm going to be a good vampire, and I'm only going to drink the blood of small little insects and rodents and stuff like that. Oh, boo boo. No. You are a vampire, damn it. You are the predator of a predator species, that is humanity, and the other, like, elfanity, dwarfanity, whatever you're going to call them,
yeah.
of demi-humanity and all that stuff. You are the predator of predators. God damn it, you act like it. You go out there and you drink some ports, SOB dry.
Ooh, okay. Okay, I like, yeah, that.
The concept of a heroic vampire is, sure, it's good for detailing this, but no. If you're going to be a predator. Accept your nature.
So you have to drink blood, and in large quantities, and it has to be fresh.
Well, maybe not necessarily enough to kill a person, but definitely enough to seriously weaken them and kill them over a successive number of nights.
Okay.
Because that way you add suspense to it when you make it not necessarily a thing. Then it's like a time. It's like if the vampire drinks from the blood and 3 nights in a row the person dies. Like, you drank too much blood, you can't survive.
Okay, I like that story.
So that way you add nice, that has a good amount of story potential for, like, oh no, it's been 2 nights, we have 1 night to do this, and so then you can work things out. Or if it's just the first night, okay, we got to this person in time, we have 2 nights to figure out who are the vampires and stop them, or at least delay them from drinking the blood. Then they can do the 3 nights again.
Yeah.
It works to an interesting back and forth cat and mouse pattern. I think not a lot of people have gone with, not even Bram Stoker worked with.
Well, I think Bram Stoker, and this is what's weird, is I think he had the vampire come back to the same person
night after night,
which is it works in the mythology because vampires kind of grow out of this like kind of idea of that a person becomes sick and is infected. But if you're a vampire and you went to, like, it probably wouldn't be the smartest thing to go to the same person.
No, that's why in a lot of things you see that they have a group of people, like 10 people will say, and then they just go like once every 10 days they drink a little bit from that person's blood. That way they don't wind up killing everybody every because of how propagation works. Vampire drinks, if it works over 3 days, that means the population doubles every 3 days.
Well, okay, so let me ask this: Do our vampires, let's say, do they care about creating more vampires, or do they just like being happy at like they're happy being vampires.
Well, I like to think that they are smart enough. The one thing that really works for vampires for me is their intelligence. Let the other monsters be horribly monstrous. Let the vampires be the smart one. Because as you can see with Pinhead in the series, a smart villain is something people can love, even when he's got a goofy name like Pinhead. So let's make them smart. So they would be smart enough to know better than trying, just, okay, this is a corpse now, I'm just going to leave it alone. Maybe, if they're going through people on the third night, this person's going to come back, I'm going to set a fire and then leave, and then the house is on fire, and everyone's like, oh no, they must have died in the fire. That's what really caused it. They were sick, and then they weren't able to make it out in time, and that's how they died. Kind of a red herring sort of thing. And it works with the brutal nature I think vampires should have.
Although it seems really weird for because I like this kind of story and I want it to work, but it also seems like, how do you make it work where you can have this kind of this person got really sick and there's bite marks on them, what's going on, and then the same vampires coming to just a random random pretty lady, just for the I guess that boils the blood or whatever, that something is happening to this poor innocent maiden, and we don't know what's going on. I think this is directly from basically Bram Stoker's Dracula, where the vampire
is enthralled by her beauty, and so he feels compelled to come back and drink her.
Yeah, he drinks her blood for some reason.
Well, okay, let me state this first. I do want the vampires to be emotion-based creatures too, because I think the whole romance and all that it works. They're very much a physical creature. Vampires are very physical. The drinking of the blood, the seduction of the person, all the stuff they do tends to revolve around being a very physical-oriented creature.
Yeah. Okay. I think I agree with that, and you made that point I think one time before, but yeah, vampires would be I was asking, I'm not sure if we recorded, but I asked whether they were gaseous or whether they could become insubstantial or ghostly.
I don't like that. I do like them turning into stuff like bats and wolves, other creatures of the night. I wouldn't mind seeing a vampire suddenly transforming into a large horde of spiders or something like that, something creepy. Because, that sounds pretty creepy, right?
Well, yeah, it sounds creepy. It doesn't, when we're talking about, a vampire, I almost think they should be confined to their physical form, and because it includes that need for blood and that need for sustenance.
So you do want to keep them more back to the traditional roots, where they are a creature with, some abilities, rather than this horribly mystical thing that happens to have a human form.
I guess so, yeah. And one of the things that I slowly had to come to grips with vampires was I don't know where I came up with this idea. It might have been my Christian upbringing or something like that. But it was that basically when a vampire took over a person, their soul was no longer there. It was the body, but and what Buffy did was. It had this thing where there seemed to be a continuity between the human who then became a vampire, and I always thought that was weird because I thought a vampire should be totally demonic new being.
Well, I think for something like D&D, it works for the vampire to retain previous qualities. For instance, the Talk with Dead spell doesn't actually have you bringing the spirit of the corpse, back so you can talk to that. You're actually just speaking with the corpse and the lingering memories. Yeah. So for something like a vampire, it maybe piecemeal memories, corruptions. I do like the concept of a vampire becoming a dark equivalency of what they were in life, which is why they initially start preying on family and loved ones.
Yeah, but although it makes you wonder, with this aristocrat character that I was sort of envisioning before, his motivation for turning himself into a vampire. On one hand, maybe he does realize, perhaps he's kind of got a twisted view of his kingdom or whatever, and he thinks he's being altruistic and helping kind of deal. But, kind of the reality is he's he's a bad guy, basically. Yeah. So.
Well, he's making pacts with demons. It's kind of on the list of things to decide whether or not you're good or bad.
Like, he might have his reasons, like you were saying about Vlad.
Well, you could make it like this: what if Vlad was losing? Because he wasn't winning all the time. What if he was losing badly? He was in danger of losing everything he had. Mm-hmm. And this was in a world where, there are demons you can make pacts with. And so he winds up deciding, I will damn myself to save my land. And that's why he does it. So then it's not exactly altruistic, but it's one of the things where, he's willing to take one for the team. He will never know the peace of heaven, so that, he can get rid of the invaders so that his subjects might be able to live free.
Yeah, basically, I mean, with this kind of twisted logic, and, you can throw in all kinds of twists to that.
Yeah.
And then basically, like, his soul kind of dies or goes to hell or, whatever happens, like, whatever we're going to deal with souls, which is probably another topic.
I think the soul should go to hell, because then you can have this really nice thing where the vampire thinks he's still the person, and then, oh no, demon reveals, hey, got your soul, and then he sees the screaming him, and he realizes just how far he's gone from his ideal vision. He's not the person he was. He is just the corruption, thinking it is still the man.
Oh, that is very cool. Okay.
I think that plays out for a nice denouement. Yeah. That is something that people will remember, by golly.
That's cool. So the new creature that's created as the vampire is like what you were saying with the Speak with Dead spell. It's like, the body has some psychic imprint on it, but it's not necessarily the same thing. It's not actually a thing, and I think that works really well if you're going along the demon bloodlines. Wouldn't that be totally something a demon would do? I will give you amazing powers, and then what he really does is take your soul and put a little, like a fragment of his own horrible essence in the body, and has that run around just besmirching whatever name you may have had. Well, that is totally something a demon would do, huh? And that's why I think it would have to be dire circumstances for, unless they were tricked into it, obviously, and they didn't realize that they would actually...
Drink this blood wine. You will like it. It tastes good. That would work for an interesting comedy based on a vampire. They told me to drink the wine. I didn't know it was anti-sacrificial wine. Oops.
Oops, now I'm a vampire.
Any chance I can get a mulligan on this? No? Okay, I guess I'm just going to play through.
Well, no, like, I don't know. Like, would you gradually turn into the vampire? If you were drinking the vampire wine or the blood of a demon or something like that, would it just be suddenly like... Oh, no, I bet what would happen is, because we want to tie vampires into kind of this sickness and this, like, you get sick for a few days, and then, like after 3 days, or 3 days, religious significance.
Well, the number 3 is also a very potent thing within mythology. Yeah. 3, 5, 7, particularly. Yeah. If you want to work it for vampires, you can make it 7 days. Sort of thing, because that works out to a full week. That works out nicely, and 7 is a highly fairy tale number.
Okay, well, so 7 days or whatever.
Yeah.
So 7 days of kind of being almost bedridden and like surely they're gonna die, and then on the 7th day, like they rise as a vampire.
Well, you could have it working. You could have it work in weird stages too, like the process of changing from a living person to a horrible blood-sucking monstrosity. You could have them vomit out their original blood. The normal blood of a human is too clean for them. They wind up just vomiting, 9-10 pints of blood, and then being struck by a ravenous hunger and then licking up their own vomited blood, sort of thing, just to show the horrible nature of it. Yeah, right? See, doesn't that strike you as the visceral nature of what vampires tend to occupy for their niche?
Well, I think that strikes home as a vampire. It's pretty creepy to me.
I think that's a nice, compelling scene that you can use to show the transition of when you leave your humanity behind. You expel the pure blood you had before, and then the vampiric thirst for blood kicks in, and you're licking it like just a savage, because that's how bad you want the blood.
Yeah. Okay, and so did we ever finish deciding whether vampires are going to be have a compulsion to drink blood?
I think it should become a powerful. Yes, it should be something. Not necessarily they'll die if they don't get it, but they'll go just out of their mind berserk, like a crackhead needing a fix.
Okay. Yeah.
So that way you can do something terrible to a vampire, like keep him stuck in his own sarcophagus for 100 years, and then he comes out jonesing for it. And then, later after he's gotten his fix, he regains his composure and tries to act like a civilized style creature. I'm not really like that. I was just very hungry. Please excuse me.
Okay, so vampires, they become they kind of lose control at moments, which is consistent with this idea that their soul is gone and what the actual essence of the vampire is only a remnant plus some demonic essence.
Yeah, I think that works well. Plus, it does help show the predatory nature. They are supposed to be predator of predators, and you can't be a predator if you don't have these urges.
Yeah,
so you want your blood. You want it fresh, you want it warm, and you want the person screaming while you do it.
It's like if you wiggle your fingers in front of a cat. The cat can't not attack.
Exactly, sort of thing. It's a compulsion of almost animalistic, bestial nature. Which is why if we were to allow them to be any shape, I would have to say wolf. Wolf works well with the whole thing. Bat works well with the symbology, the blood-sucking sort of thing. But I can easily see them as just being something unnatural that's always in human form. You want them to get up to a third story, let them crawl the walls like some creepy, weird, I'm not human thing.
I like that. And I like the idea of vampires kind of, they don't become insubstantial, but they become, I don't know, quieter. They're able to move,
Oh yes, I do like the whole quiet thing. It does work with the predator nature again, and it sets itself up for something where a guy thinks he's alone. I'm doing this. Okay, what's going on? Keep ahead, and then all of a sudden, he's right behind you. You never heard him come up. And I'll tell you this: I'm kind of a quiet guy when I'm walking around, and I don't mean to scare my wife. I haven't ever meant to scare my roommates. But there is a certain thrill in seeing them jump. So, yes, I do believe a quiet nature is definitely a good way to go.
Good. And, okay, so we mentioned wolves, too. So now we got it, whenever you bring up vampires now, you have to deal with the issue of werewolves. And are there, what is that relationship?
I think it should always be antagonistic, especially if you consider them both predator of predators. They're both competing for effectively the same resource.
Okay, so they're kind of lions and tigers, or no?
Or bears and bears, if you want to go
bears
that way.
Bears and other bears.
Yeah, because, they have very defined territories, and if you have one bear cross into another one, there's a lot of hassle to be had. But, you could work that as any two predators near the top, vying for the same food source. And so that would be a very nice way of showing it, because if anything, werewolves are even more primal and bestial and physical than vampires. The core difference between them is that vampires tend to be more urbane. They tend to be civilized. They're the kind of person that talks with their victim. They're very social.
So you think, maybe there's more of that human component remaining in a vampire?
Well, it depends on how you want to do it as human, because they would have the psychopath, or urge style.
Right, that's a good point, because
they would get a kick out of talking with the person, knowing that later on this week I'm going to start draining you of your life's essence. Whereas the werewolf doesn't care about that stuff. They're more country. Hey look, there's a person. I'll run up, rip out the good meaty chunks, and then I guess maybe maul the rest. You know what? If they're a werewolf, maybe they'll defecate on their remains and then run off.
The differences that you're talking about are almost cultural, really. If you wrote a story like that, you could imagine a werewolf wearing a top hat. Oh, gee, where did that come from? No, you can imagine a werewolf that's kind of civilized and kind of bucking that trend a little bit.
Oh, yes, I think there could be some fun with that, too. I do recall a Jack Nicholson movie of somewhat similar thing, of how the nature of the werewolf could very much complement a person in a social setting where you vie for dominance.
Mm.
Yes.
Wait, who's it?
It was the Jack Nicholson movie.
Jack
I think it was
Nicholson.
just called Wolf, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, that sounds fun. Okay.
Yes, it's nice. He starts out meek once he gets bitten by the werewolf. Sorry, he starts taking on the traits, and he starts working in a much more primal level, knowing how to intimidate other people to increase his ranking within the pack.
Oh yeah, okay.
And see, that's another thing too. Is that's how I would picture werewolves to operate. They work within a pack-style mentality. Vampires tend to be much more solitary. There's no one else above them. There's only people far below them. They're like cats or, psychopaths.
Yeah,
Depending who you talk to, there's not much difference between the two, but...
Hey, I wanted to come back to distinctiveness now, because I think we've defined vampires very iconically, and we've picked some things that we like about them, some things that we kind of would do away with.
You could finagle over the supernatural abilities, but that tends to only work out as ways to advance a plot. It's nothing in and of itself. Yeah.
So this might take more thought just outside the podcast, just brainstorming. Like how could the vampires be different?
So physiologically different.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's always fun to do because, the Buffy vampires had weird foreheads.
Yeah, they're monster face.
Monster faces. I guess I like that. I like the idea of vampires becoming kind of sallow and become like pale and drained. That's
unless they've just
common.
Recently fed, in which case they're very blushed, like they're in a room that's too warm for them.
Might be interested if vampires were kind of saggy and jowly, so you know how old people get if they have very saggy skin, it's hanging off their face, and then they could become kind of puffed out when they feed or something.
Oh, that's an interesting way of doing it, and avoids the stereotypically "I'm so beautiful" vampire that everyone must totally want. You keep away from the Anne Rice style, we'll say.
I'm not too into the high charisma vampire.
Well, I think if it's high charisma we're talking about, it should be emphasized in personality. They're very commanding. Julius Caesar was not a pretty man, but he could command armies. He could manipulate the entire Senate around him almost at will. There's some talk about some of the stuff he did that looked like faux pas that were actually masterfully designed into doing what he wanted. So that's how I would like to see them portrayed.
Yeah.
Julius Caesar is not going to appear on GQ. Although I don't think they're actually doing any more issues in real world. So that's another subtopic for something else.
Didn't Steve Buscemi appear on GQ?
Well, yeah, but I mean that's because he has so much charisma. He's able to overcome that, despite having what some people call fish eyes.
So will you agree with me to have droopy dog vampires?
Well, we can say a corrupted style. Maybe not always, a droopy, but they could definitely have something about them that doesn't necessarily look wholesome, right, or conventionally great.
Okay, all right.
That way you can get into something kind of like a Count Orlok vampire, if you recall any of the clips they've shown throughout the last near 100 years it's been around. He's the guy that it was a black and white silent movie. You usually see little bits appearing here and there. He's got the really long teeth, no hair, long pointy ears.
Oh, you know what else would be a really good, cool vampire trait? You know how when you get a bruise and it's green and purple?
You get the weird colors going in there.
Yeah, I think that would be a cool bit. I think they did that on Buffy too, so they had some greenish vampires. But I think that would be a cool thing.
Huh. Interesting.
Their whole entire complexion was a color of a bruise.
Or mold.
Ooh.
They get some sort of fungus thing. If they don't spray themselves twice a week, it comes back. They are a corpse after all.
Do we have time to keep on going?
We can make it a little extra long tonight.
keep on going. Yeah, I think we're not going to get to our other topics. But
That's okay. I think we're in some very good topics because this is all about establishing your fiction.
Yeah.
And if you don't make it yours, if your dwarves aren't your dwarves, if your elves aren't your elves, you're really not telling your story. So I think it would be nice if we could work this as something to talk about for all sorts of the archetypical villains and monsters.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, we could have our own versions of them. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so now I forgot what topic, because I wanted to bring up something that would probably lead us down another rabbit
About
hole.
how corpse-like they are?
Okay, yeah. I wanted to ask that, like, since we're not necessarily talking about D&D here...
this could just be a story you want to write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, if
Everyone
you were
wants
to
write about vampires.
If you were to basically kind of look inside a vampire, would you find functioning organs? What do you think?
That's a good question. Okay, because we'll state that what we're dealing with now is the Western medieval style of vampire.
Yeah, basically, I think.
There are vampires in almost every culture. There's some stuff they have about weird creatures in Australia. There's creatures in India whose heads pop off. Creatures in Malaysia and the Philippines whose entire, body splits off at the waist. Hopping vampires over in, I do believe it's China. So we're just going to work with just the Western style vampire.
Okay, and I want to state my preference, and this can be swayed, but my preference at first of that corporeal vampire that's like basically confined to a body, and so it can't it can't split off, or you can't chop a vampire. Basically, my kind of idea of vampires is that this whole idea of staking or cutting off the head or things like that, basically anything that would render the body incapable of moving would kill the vampire, is what I'm thinking. Well,
it does tend to work along with the standard, more historical definition of the vampire. And I do like that. Of course, mind you, that's why they had to come up with eventually burn it. When in doubt, burn.
Yeah, sure, and that's just maybe an extra precaution, but yeah.
Okay, but now here's the thing. For the physical nature of the vampire and how much of a corpse it is, what happens when you open it up.
Yeah.
The blood clearly represents life. The symbology is heavily there.
Yeah.
So when they're taking your life, they're taking your blood. That's how they do it. That's their theme.
Yeah.
So what if the more they drink the blood, the better they look, less green around the gills, so to speak.
Yeah.
And if you were to cut them, it would look fairly healthy organs, maybe a little atrophy, maybe a little withered, but still all there. Whereas if they haven't eaten in a while, you chop open the abdominal cavity, the whole thing's rotten. And that they drink the blood to keep themselves in that state.
Oh, okay.
So you could set up an interesting scenario where a vampire purposefully forgoes drinking the blood of others to force its organs to atrophy so that it can open itself up and hide something of great importance within its body.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah. And because you have that set up, that's what, and I said it before, they're a thinking type of villain is what we'd be thinking of. So that works very well too. That's totally something a very cunning, evil mind would think about. I will let my organs wither so that I can create an abdominal cavity I can store the MacGuffin in, and nobody will find it. Ha ha ha!
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
So that's how we're doing it then. We're going along the path of most awesome.
Well,
never a bad way to go.
In this case, I'm gonna say yeah, we go with that, and I like that because. It ties vampires. It makes them. Because basically they're from humans, so they're similar to mummies in that way. But it gives them a connection to mummies. Yes,
which I think is another interesting way of going things, and we may want to spend some time talking about that in the future.
Next episode, mummies.
Mummies/zombies. I see a lot of connection between them.
Zombies. Oh man, we should.
A mummy is a purposefully, made undead, whereas a zombie is slumming it, man. Nothing's taken out, no process. That's why they're rotten everywhere. Mm-hmm. So a mummy is really just a really well-made zombie.
Yeah.
They're made for the long term, and zombies are they're cheap.
And mummies, it's basically in an artisanal skill that to create a good mummy. It's you spend your whole life going to school to learn how to be a mummifier. Yeah, mummifier.
They prefer the mammology.
Mammologist.
Yes, you spend your undergrad years working on animals, and then you progress your way up.
Oh, yeah.
And occasionally, you might be able to buy a body from someone who's not doing too well, and they want to support their family. When they die, you get their body, and hey, then you get to learn how to take the brain out through the nostril. You can't learn that with just an irregular animal. That's got to be learned animal for animal and human for human.
Oh, man, this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, I think we've come up with a very good vampire. But here's the final question. What sort of mystical powers should they have?
Oh, mystical. Okay.
Because, let's face it, Dracula had the whole hypnotic gaze. He had shape-shifting abilities. He could climb on walls. He had, let's face it, some power duplication. Could have been a bat and flown through, to get into here. No, he just crawls along the wall tonight.
Well, I was leaning towards very minimal mystical abilities. I do want them to be able to sneak really well. But
just a preternatural silence.
But I could be, if you have good ideas for, interesting...
Well, I don't want them to have the hypnotic gaze. That seems like a cheap cop-out. Oh, that's why I'm doing these things. He told me to with his mystic power eyes. No, man. That's taking a quick way out. I'm sorry to the Bram Stoker people out there. He took the quick, cheap way out on that one. He could have had some really deep things going with Renfield, and the whole situation going like that, where he builds up this whole... Well, I suppose the whole industry for mentality wasn't there at the time. But have you ever seen Tangled?
Are you... I haven't...
The Rapunzel story that they did.
Oh, I didn't.
There was some very interesting stuff they did with the mother, the not actually the mother, the evil witch stepmother type thing, where she was an emotionally manipulative and abusive person, and she commanded that she made sure that Rapunzel stayed in the tower through emotional manipulation and abuse. And people who were in the know have reported saying, this was an amazing movie because of that. I saw this happening. That was really deep what you guys did. So I think that's, if you can pull it off, that sort of writing.
That's preferable to the magic
eyes that just let you do this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think, the era of Mesmer, where we get the word mesmerize, that was do you know, are you aware of this?
Yes, I am aware of
Mesmer is a person, for the people listening. Mesmer was a person who came up with mesmerism, which was basically hypnosis.
No one ever talks about Kirkbyism, but they will one day.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Now I gotta figure out what Kirkbyism is.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
So I think in Bram Stoker's time, I think Mesmer came before Bram Stoker.
I think it was clearly a thing. If not just him, there was the whole occult scene going on. So there was these powers, and he was tapping into that. I won't fault him for it, but I will continue saying he took the quick, lazy way out. He could have come up with something that was masterful and really opened people's eyes at how other people are manipulated. That would have been interesting.
Well, I think in some ways you can read passages in books and stuff about hypnotizing eyes. You can read those as kind of a metaphor for I don't know how else to describe the way that this guy interacted, but somehow magic, as if by magic, he was able to control. When it really is those kind of psychological tricks.
Take some time, man. Read a biology book about dominance and positioning.
Oh, that would make for good writing.
Yes, you can say, describe how he moves, purposeful and yet conservation of movement. I think best, if you want to think about them as a creature, think about them as a cat, how it stalks its prey, how it moves, and then once it's got the prey, how it plays with them over a long course. Hey, there's your 7 days. So think of them as an extremely sadistic cat.
So vampires are cats and werewolves are dogs.
It's a bit of a superficial thing, but it does help get you at least the initial mindset.
No, I like it works as a metaphor at least. Yeah.
It helps get you the broad strokes, and then as you start delving into the ones personally, you can do your little proper, precise movements and strokes and details.
Uh-huh.
So yes, but I think ultimately for powers should be minimal. And they should be subtle. They should be powers you can use and get away with in a setting around with other people. They'll just attribute it up as to, okay, he's just that kind of person. He moves quietly. Oh, yeah, he's just the kind of person that winds up staring you down. He just has that intense gaze. Not a magical eye gaze, but the way he stares at you when he looks at you. The way he seems to be sizing you up, sort of thing. If you describe all that, and how he positions himself to make you feel smaller, like he'll position his body so that you're facing more towards a corner, so that you're feeling backed away.
Well, I like this, although, I'll point out about some of that is that it could come from that aristocratic personality who was the one who decided to go with the vampiric bond or whatever, he initiated contact with this demon who he's drinking the demon blood or whatever. So part of that whole force of personality thing could come from just that this guy happens to be this aristocrat who's really, got it together.
Knows how to play the social game.
Yeah.
Okay, that works out nicely too. Okay. Although there is something to be said that vampires do personify the aristocrat. If you want to write a story in history about an aristocrat being an evil dick and get away with your head, still attached after everything's done, no, you make the person a vampire.
Yeah, okay, so I like that. So I want to say that the curse of the vampire, which some people take voluntarily,
yes,
includes some kind of, not necessarily that you automatically become better at all this social stuff, but it includes better senses, perhaps.
Oh, definitely, yes.
You're able to read people better. Perhaps you're able to smell their fear or something like that.
Oh, that would work very nice. Yes, being able to smell the pheromones and sort of things like that.
Yeah.
I think that could work very nicely. Yes.
So it wouldn't necessarily increase your skill, but it would make it easier.
It gives
for
you that inner edge to it.
Yeah.
But think about this though. For vampires, is you have Count Dracula, and you have the Countess Elizabeth Bathory as being prime examples. No one ever heard of a werewolf being a duke.
Well, I suppose a duke could fall to being a werewolf, but it's not something that you can stick around, just be the duke and stick around and be a werewolf.
And then it's once every 28 days you freak out, become a furry, and start mauling people.
Is there not a story about a duke who might be a semi-good guy who has his servants lock him up every...
That is an interesting thing for the Ravenland setting, the Nova Vasa area of the central core. It's actually more of a Jekyll Hyde thing than it is a werewolf.
Well, okay, so that's out there.
But yes, that does work very well if you want to have a nobleman going for the werewolf thing. The physical change, it works.
Yeah, but I can see how basically werewolfism, lycanthropy.
Yes. Thank you.
Is not really it's not really something useful to somebody in power.
Yes.
It's not really useful to anybody in a human society, really.
Also, I will make a quick point. The proper term is therianthropy if it's not actually a wolf.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
But yes, we are talking about wolves, so it is lycanthropy in this case.
Okay. Or werebats.
Chiroptery?
Chiroptery, okay.
Okay, well, yes, but there's a proper term for just animal man thing, therianthropy.
So what I was saying is that the interesting thing about vampirism is you can kind of see the appeal because you retain some control, or the creature that becomes you retains some
at least the illusion of control,
yeah.
Depending on whether or not the demon actually takes your soul.
And then there's all the added benefits of strength and
Yes, I think the standard stuff, superior strength, should go in there.
We didn't talk about that. I guess, yeah.
Well, that should be qualified under the supernatural abilities. Stuff you can pass off, so there's, man, he flipped a table. Dude, I've seen people flip a table. It was during the daylight. They were not a vampire. That's just an adrenaline surge. Yeah. So it's something people can write off. It's man, he just pulled the bars right off the window. Yeah, I once pulled my brother out of a vehicle because he was so annoying. I just had to shake him around a bit. I'm no vampire.
So, but can they do you remember the vampire in Twilight? How he stopped a speeding van?
Yeah, he could have done much better at that because I don't think did they ever really show what happened to the person in the vehicle?
Oh, I don't remember now. I think the guy was okay because he got out of the vehicle and he apologized to the girl or something like that, basically.
Yeah, I suspect he actually had a concussion.
He probably would have. And the other thing about, like, the vampire in Twilight is, I imagine that, like, you know, he stopped a speeding van. In reality, that van would put, like, the physics of it would be the van would just take him away. Even if it didn't hurt him, it would, like...
It would put him into,
moved.
Yeah.
And he would not have been able to save the girl unless he could push her out of the way.
See, that's why I think, let's think about it this way. A vampire is like a poker player. They don't like to give away their hand. If a vampire is going to save a lady from an oncoming vehicle, they would be much more at running in, snagging the person up and running off, rather than stopping a vehicle dead halt like they were Superman.
Yeah.
So in that case, I think that also works with the nature we're trying to describe for the vampire. You don't just give everything away when you're in a social setting. You hold back what you are, and you only use that when it becomes advantageous for you. In which case, saving the girl from a thing by stopping it, not advantageous. Scooping her up and carrying her off out of the harm's way, completely good.
If you could do that without, like, equally damaging her, because obviously the speed at which you'd have to remove her from the road would be...
Oh, so she has a little whiplash and getting smacked by a car.
Yeah. That would be better if that had happened. And, or did that happen in Twilight? I can't remember. I think at some point she ended up in the hospital because of him.
I think she was trying to commit suicide because she was getting some sort of freaky high off the whole thing.
Did she commit suicide?
Honestly, I haven't seen everything, and I haven't been paying a lot of attention to the stuff I have seen.
I do remember broken glass being involved. I think, she ran into a window or something, but not on purpose.
Oh. Few people do run into the window on purpose. Okay, I'm a Twilight fan. Like, what can I say? But I'm not... I respect it as a work of fiction, although I do find it not to be my particular cup of tea. But you don't have to like something to appreciate it. But I love how, like, klutzy she is. Like, well, that's one of the things that is supposed to draw the reader into the protagonist is, oh, this person has flaws. I have some similar flaws I can perceive in that. No one's as dexterous as they would like to be. Everyone remembers fumbling for the cup before it shatters on the ground. So it's one of the things that you can put in for a person that is an instant appeal. Yeah, although I suppose that makes the character, like, a lot of people complain that there's this huge difference in power between the powerful vampire. I mean, that's the point of the story. The powerful vampire and then this klutzy teenage kid. I was always more concerned about the age difference. I don't care, whether or not your mentality stays the same. You're 107 years old, buddy. That ain't cool. I guess it's a bit odd. That's what I find to be odd. I wonder, though, I don't even know more Twilight talk, but we're well into this podcast, so people... But yes, okay, so, back to the topic, though, is vampires with their supernatural abilities should be subtle. Should be something you can play off as something a mortal might have under extraordinary circumstances. Vampires just have it all the time. They just don't use it unless they feel like it. Okay, yeah. There. Yeah. Although, like, in a world where vampirism is a thing that can happen, like, to a person, like a person can be bit and become a vampire, there has to be... Or drink the blood. Or drink the blood. Yeah, exactly. Yes. There have to be as many ways to deal with that as there are basically, like, humans. Like, every vampire is... their weaknesses. Unique. So then would you describe what value to the purity flaws? Why does vampire work 100% of the time against a vampire? It's pure flame. Why does garlic repel them? It is because garlic is said to purify the blood, and they are repelled by it because of their corrupt nature. Why does the cross keep them away? And more expanded stuff, why does any holy symbol keep them away? It's the purity of faith. Okay. Yeah, I guess we're talking about weaknesses now. I've not ever been impressed by any weakness, except for, like, things like, cut off the head. That's obvious. Stake through the heart, kind of those... Holy wafers in the mouth. Well, that's another one that doesn't really impress me too much. I could probably be convinced to throw in, like,
a supernatural weakness like that? Because obviously they're attracted to blood, so that's important.
So then what would you put for like the silver then? Sometimes vampires get hurt a lot by silver. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, okay,
So what do you think for silver?
What would I say for silver? I'm tempted to just say, like, no, just like any other, like a regular weapon will hurt a vampire. I mean, I think they're resistant, basically, because their skin toughens or something.
Well, I think it should be something like, even if their skin doesn't toughen, it's not like they really need their heart.
Yeah,
it's not like they really need that stomach. So you could run you could have like a. Okay, we'll make this more of a modern setting. You take like a fence post, a metal fence post, and you just jam it through their abdomen. They'll grab hold of it and they'll smack you with their one free hand. They don't need those organs. Maybe you could make an argument about shattering the spine at the end, so then, they have to drink some blood to help heal that up, and you don't need like maybe a chiropractor to put all the vertebrae back in order.
Yeah.
So I think you could go with that. That might be the best vulnerability to the vampire, is that they don't have the thickened skin. They just get to ignore wounds that would kill you and me because they don't need to use those organs. I do recall an interesting one about a story about a guy who got away from a vampire. He was working on a railroad. This is a later type thing.
Okay, yeah.
When he was attacked by the vampire, and he just out of reflex grabbed his shovel and smacked the vampire in the head, knocking its head around, so that the head was on backwards, so the vampire couldn't actually get to him, because whenever he saw him, he would try and run and thus go the wrong direction. So I think that plays out. It's a little fun. You can play that for comedy. You can play that for, that was very lucky of me.
Okay, well, I want to say that vampires are more resilient, more resistant to damage. Not totally immune. Like, remember when you were talking about how vampire organs were basically functional? If
they look functional if they've been drinking.
Well, I like that they actually kind of are, in that vampire organs and stuff are a little bit more resilient than humans.
They'll heal eventually.
Basically, they can take more damage and keep on going, kind of or they can root around.
Well, we can say that for part of their muscles. Their organs might not be great, but their muscles keep working.
Yeah,
it's like Timex, man. Take a lick and keep on ticking.
I suppose maybe their metabolism is different, so that basically you could damage their gut, and because a human, if a human gets a gut wound, they're basically toast unless they get to a modern hospital.
No, even then, it's not necessarily a guarantee.
Yeah. So I want to say if a vampire gets a wound to the gut, it will kill them unless they I'd say drinking blood would be a way to for them to kind of heal themselves, so they don't have to go to a hospital necessarily.
I do like how the blood would fix them, but I don't want to have it say, okay, it just automatically magically fixes them. Like if you do shatter its spine, it does have to get put in. Then the vampire takes a drink, things heal up properly.
Okay.
If the vampire wants to heal a gaping chest wound, they're going to have to put the skin back in order, sew it up, then drink the blood. It heals up properly. Then I guess you can take out the stitches.
Okay, I like that they stay conscious while they're wounded. They're like, oh god.
Well, it's what they're technically already dead at this point under almost every style of vampire. So if death isn't going to keep them from going unconscious, massive wounds aren't going to do that either.
Okay, although I was kind of thinking that the vampires in a way they're kind of alive, in a way they have
a crude mockery of what life once was.
You might say that. I mean, I want to say at the cellular levels they have functioning cells, and the organs function, but it's just different.
I would like to say that the organs can be used to house blood, sort of thing, but I don't think it works good for them actually working with their organs. Because then, if they have all that working, does the marrow work too? Shouldn't they be producing their own blood?
Well, let's say no. Let's say that part of vampirism is they don't produce their own blood anymore.
Okay. Also, let's work with this one. If a vampire does have working organs, I can see that working nicely, because then, the vampire can be at a social setting and eat the hors d'oeuvres like everyone else. On the other hand, it means 12 to 24 hours later, vampire poop. I don't like that. Something just doesn't seem right with me. Maybe they can keep the food in their stomach if they've been drinking blood, because the stomach holds nice, but they're going to have to purge later on, because it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit there.
Well, I mean, like, if they still have all of the gut, then it could still go through.
So you're in favor of vampire poop?
Well, I'd say that vampires would.
Flush came the sound from within the small water closet. Dracula emerged later there and, lifting up his belt as he tightened it just a little bit, "Whew!" he exclaimed. "I am not going to Taco Bell again."
Well, not that I want to get into it, but the way I imagine vampires working is that they don't digest things very well. So what happens...
So it's mechanical digestion, and then the whole thing just kind of filters down through peristalsis and gravity until it comes out like horribly on the other end, like effectively delayed vomiting.
Oh yeah, basically, yeah, and it's very unpleasant. It's also like it would be.
It would be unpleasant, yes. Anything that's not a fine mush by that point is, by definition, fairly unpleasant.
I don't know if the listeners really want to listen to us dissect the.
Okay, well, I think that works, because then we can have it both ways. Is if the vampire doesn't want it to go through, he will, or he or she later on does have to purge it out of the system the easier way, through the throat, as opposed to having it go through.
Yeah, basically, food doesn't really do anything for them.
Yeah, they don't get any nutritional amount out of it. Their stomach isn't producing stomach acids. Their pancreas isn't producing pancreatic juices or anything like that.
Yeah, now we're getting somewhere.
Okay, so yes. Oh, in that case, they keep the organs. The organs are still there, look healthy, but they don't necessarily do their original function. They're kind of like a blood reservoir, some place to keep it as their body burns it up, however that works.
Okay.
Okay, I can dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. But now I guess we're back into this, like, a gut wound probably wouldn't kill the vampire then. They would just, because they're not necessarily relying on
No,
that.
but it could very much hurt them, because don't forget, you can't do a lot of movement when you have ripped abdominals.
That's true. You need the muscles, yeah.
Yes. So in that case, the abdominal wound won't kill them, but it will really put a crimp in their day. Or night, I suppose, in this case. Because you can't do any lifting, you can't do this. Just talk to anybody that's had surgery on the abdomen as to what they can and can't do, and it's really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it can work that way, and we can have a lot of fun with it. But by and large, no, massive trauma doesn't really stop them.
So
it does slow them down.
So if certain organs are damaged, a vampire could just essentially just go on existing without certain,
Well, I think it would be one of the situations where drinking blood revives it.
Yeah, but
Things might not feel right if it's missing, say 10 feet of the lower intestines.
But they could still live.
Unlive. Well, what they might want to do in that case is grab a hold of a body of one of their victims, get the necessary part of the organs, and then do a little surgery, put that in on themselves, replace the missing part, drink some blood, it all heals up. Hey, it's all back again. Until then, it's a little weird.
I think that's... would that work, though? Would that... wouldn't...
It does mean that if you do significantly injure a vampire, like you've shot it a couple times, it's no longer just a vampire draining blood. It's out looking for body parts, too, to help replace the damaged ones it has. I don't want to wait for these kidneys to heal again. It feels weird without them. I'm going to do a little unnecessary surgery on this person who is, I guess, technically still living, but unconscious because I drained enough of their blood.
Okay, and that I like that because that will make our vampires interesting and unique. Because now they're organ harvesters too.
When you hurt them, and that's an interesting way to know that you've hurt them, or that you've had a vampire that has been somehow injured. So then you can start doing stuff. You can do detective work tracing. Okay, this event happened, and the person apparently ran away despite being hit by a car. And, hey, this chiropractor's gone missing and was found missing a lot of his body parts. So what happened? The vampire gets hit, needs the chiropractor to put the body stuff back in order, then harvests the organs, drains the blood, becomes whole once again as this vicious monster, because that's how they see people, as just something to be used. In an aspect, that's their predatory nature.
Again, the cultural thing, and I think part of the reason you become a vampire is because you have a superiority complex or whatever. So that's already
not
part
for
of
the
your
meek, yes.
makeup.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the part of the whole milieu of becoming a vampire includes that you're a little bit megalomaniacal
to
begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then the person who gets suckered into drinking the blood wine, would they become more like the traditional vampire, or would it just be a thing where their natural personality stuff is heightened?
I think if a person didn't, somebody would have to tell them, because the person would just get sick and die. That's my
So it has to have an interesting willing component to it then.
They wouldn't necessarily have a craving for blood. They just feel sick. If they accidentally somehow ingested some blood and felt better, they'd be like, oh, that's weird. That seemed to work. But they wouldn't just, come here, wife.
So then how would that work with the secondary type vampires, the ones that don't drink the demon blood, the ones that get bitten by the other vampires and have their blood drained? Would that be something where deep down they actually wanted to have something like that happen to them, even if they're not consciously aware of it? It's like a tacit agreement to the whole situation?
I suppose it would. I think that humanity, there are dark places within all of us, is what I want to say. So I think that being bit by a vampire
and drained of your blood would be just that the natural average person would default to becoming a vampire because that's what they really want, and only those with superior strength of will and character with personality traits against that wouldn't become. They would effectively become like Sankrisat, immune to vampirism.
Well, no, if you got bit by a vampire, the vampire would have to, after that, would have to say, okay, I bit you, now you're a vampire, now you have to drink blood, and you basically have, your soul, is gone, but basically what remains has to be I'm going to go through with this. It has to have enough oomph remaining in it, or else it dies, which I guess that could explain why the vampires are
not doubling every couple weeks in population.
What I wanted to say, that explains why they're top of the social ladder and stuff like that, because if they don't have that will to persevere as vampires, they just wither away and die.
So they just don't become. Okay, that's very interesting. I like how that works. Because that way you don't have to say they become more predatory. It's like they were predators to begin with.
Because all humans are to an extent, but if they're not enough of predators, then they wouldn't.
So the vampire drains the blood of the hippie guy, and he doesn't become, because dude, he is all about the peace and being one with the earth. He doesn't actually become the vampire. He just doesn't have the cutthroat nature in him.
I think that would be true of most hippies that got bit by vampires. Yeah. There might be one or two that had latent abilities that they didn't realize they had, latent aggression.
Let's face it, there are some hippies out there, historically, that were in it to become the head of their hippie place so that they can exert control over their little, whatever you want to call it, hippie commune and all that.
Yeah, I think
can be found anywhere.
I think they'd be the exception.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, so... But more hippies than the average population would be effectively immune to the vampirism effect.
Probably, yeah, and people like monks, and also I think academics, basically anybody who's kind of lives in the world of the mind.
I'm not so sure about that. There is an interesting cutthroat nature about publish or perish there.
Okay, yeah, maybe I should take that back.
So, okay, maybe amongst the people who are very knowledgeable about themselves, who they are as a person. Self-help counselors and gurus.
Maybe.
Actually, maybe not. They do try and get a decent amount of money as they want to tell them how to work through their stuff.
Yeah, I was almost going to say they seem to be the ones who could benefit from self-help.
Well, we'll say the true spiritual people then. The people that know who they are within and know how to make these sacrifices for this or that reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're saying of those people, basically, if they got bit by a vampire, they'd basically die because they don't have that...
a fate that is not worse than death. So, that actually is just a fate that is death, as opposed to when they say a vampire is a fate worse than death.
But I like that, yeah, a pure soul bitten by a vampire just dies.
Well, I think that's how they prefer it.
I think that works, yeah.
So no saints turned vampires. That's good to know.
No actual saints turned vampires. It might be interesting to have,
the church has a lot of saints. Do they have anybody covering that? Like people who redeem themselves?
Oh, probably, yeah. I don't know.
So patron saint of vampires.
Somebody who...
That could be pretty fun. I gotta start finding a resource for that and looking in. I know they have 3 different saints for gamblers. They got to have one for supernatural people, right?
I don't know. But you know, I think we've been talking for just almost 2 hours.
A long podcast, but I think it was a very enriching one on all things. We came up with a vampire. We discussed some very nice ways to start a campaign or even a novel, depending how you want to go about it.
Yeah.
So yes, I think this is one of our very helpful episodes.
So if you're listening to this and you have wonderful ideas to add to this discussion, post a comment or send us an email and let us know. Or
especially if what we came up with for Vampire actually already exists and we just recreated it independently. I would like to find out if that's true.
Well, yeah. So
always good to know.
Feedback. Please give us feedback. We want lots of feedback.
But no hate mail, unless you really want to.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up with that, and we'll see you again real soon.
All right, good day.
Send us money.